So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com program, brought to you by Techstrong and Plutora. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of Techstrong Learning, and we do have an exciting panel ahead for you. First, we do have just a couple of housekeeping notes to cover. So today's session is being recorded. If you miss any of today's conversation, or you'd like to maybe rewatch or share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. If you have any questions, we'd like you to send those into us using the Q&A tab, which can be found on the right side of your screen. That's also where you'll find the chat tab, and that's where we want you to get to know your fellow audience members, or maybe just let us know from where you are tuning in. It looks like we might also have, we do want to know all of your pets' names, so please do tell us that in the chat as well. We've got 3 polls throughout today's program, 2 towards the beginning and 1 toward the end, so keep an eye out for those. And if you navigate to the handouts, you'll find a copy of today's slides available for download for you. So on to our topic of discussion today. It is SRE plus VSM equals a direct line to customer experience. And I'm joined by Helen Beal, Chief Ambassador at DevOps Institute, Shivagami Gugan, DevOps Site Reliability Engineering and Cloud Architecture Evangelist at IDC Technologies, and Bob Davis, Chief Marketing Officer at Plutora. So Helen, Shivagami, and Bob, thank you all so much for joining me today. Helen, do you want to take it from here?
I certainly can. Thanks so much, Cody, and hello, everyone, and lovely to meet everyone and hear about your pets, Teddy and Jax and Charlie. And Goose, that's a great name, I bet that. And I think we've had this conversation before, Michelle, that is actually a Top Gun reference, if I remember correctly. So yes, we're here to talk about VSM and SRE. So our talk map today is in front of you. So we're going to start by talking about what SREs can see and why they can see it, how these two things, VSM and SRE, tie together, how this affects customers' behaviors and how we can optimize efficacy. So we'll be taking questions live, as Cody says. Just pop them either in the chat or in Q&A, and we'll answer them when they occur to you. So let's start by talking about this piece here. This is a piece of research from the DevOps Institute. And we're talking here about how different enterprises are using SRE differently. So Shivagami, talk to us about what you think when you see these different stats here on how SRE is being used.
Okay, so it's evening here. I'm from Dubai. So in terms of how SREs are being leveraged, so it's quite different depending on how much of maturity the organization has and what is their understanding about SRE. So, if we look at these statistics, it says that they are using it in specific teams, and that's typically what is being observed across. So there are some target areas, and then we have the SREs deployed in these target areas. So site reliability engineers, inherently, they encourage a culture of collaboration between the teams. And it's very difficult to actually do it broad-based across the organization. So we have seen people adopting it in certain domains, certain areas where, depending on the systems, depending on probably Gartner models, like you have the system of records vis-a-vis the system of innovation or system of differentiation, and we see the adoption more on the system of innovation side.
Nice. Bob, do you see anything different in your travels?
No, I don't, but I do see an increasing interest in looking back into the development organization and having a more direct line into what's going on. That there is a face to the customer that is really coming alive, and that's been what's exciting to me. Not having come from the SRE side, but more the development side, and really starting to see that partnership go to another level, and that's kind of the trend that really gets me excited.
Nice. So let's have the audience get involved and tell us a little bit about where they're at as well. So that is the question, where are you at? The answers that the audience can choose from is our entire organization is using SRE. SRE is being used within specific teams, products or services. SRE is being piloted. We tried SRE, but it didn't work. We haven't tried SRE yet. Or if you've got something else, then just please comment in the chat. So that poll should be open. Yes, we're getting some responses now, so that's great. So let's do a forecast, Bob. What do you think is going to be the most popular answer out of the ones we have here?
Well, I think probably that number 2 there. I would expect that the trend of using it within specific teams is probably a pretty popular answer. That would be my guess, but I would think Shivagami might have some interesting thoughts there too.
I think it's no surprise that like 27% is talking about SRE. We haven't tried SRE yet. So again, it goes to the terminology. It depends on how they understand SRE. So SRE not being piloted and SRE not tried yet seems to be like the trend now. So yeah, as we go through this presentation, we will just see how the understanding of how we can deploy SRE changes, and especially with value stream engineering as well.
And there's about half and half, as you've just noted there. So if we look between the most popular answer, as Bob identified, with the being used within specific teams, products or services, and then we've got just dropping a little bit, and then between that we haven't tried it yet, or piloting is the other half. And I think it's quite interesting that nobody has said we tried it but it didn't work, so that's good news. And nobody has also said our entire organization is using SRE. Is that where anybody would be at some point, do you think, Shivagami, that everybody is using SRE?
So everybody is using SRE in one form or other. It's just that people think SRE is more towards operations and it's about operational resilience. But for us to have operational resilience and to have very good reliability, we need to do a lot of things in the left, and that's what people have to understand, that they have already adopted SRE, and SRE is working in one form or other, either through automation or through our the deployment life cycle that we have adopted, the development life cycle. And there is always some focus on how do we improve these processes so that we we crash the lead times, we improve on our defect detection ratios and things like that. But people do not really understand that these really actually are key tenets of site reliability engineering, because there's so much of hype around what site reliability engineering is in its purest form, which people think is about how do we really build operational resilience in a very distributed environment, and it's really something very, very mature. So it's a myth that we have to kind of bust. It's very hyped out in terms of site reliability engineering, but we can start small, and we can start in areas with some of the key purposes around site reliability engineering. So which is like failure is normal. Let's bring the wisdom of operations into development side. Let's also take the development experience into operations side. So these are a few things that I think most of the organizations are doing it without them actually realizing that they are adopting SRE.
Nice. So those key tenets like failure is normal, so important, aren't they? And actually somebody has commented in the chat that lots of companies are calling SRE tech ops. And I know that Jane Grohl at DevOps Institute talks about SRE replacing ITSM and things like that as well. So let's have a look at this next slide, also from the Global SRE Pulse Survey and report from DevOps Institute. And I put a comment in there saying that some organizations are opting for a single central team of SREs, sometimes replacing their traditional IT operations team and updating their ITSM practices with SRE approaches. Others are embedding SRE in their multifunctional autonomous product-oriented teams. And I say the organization or design doesn't matter as long as the SRE outcomes for availability and customer experience are attained. And we're seeing here on the right the split between these different team topologies. So Shivagami, how much of my statement do you agree with? And is there anything that surprises you in the data?
So yeah. So in the purest form, ITSM has given us a lot of definitions that SRE has built upon. For example, SLO, SLA. So there are a few fundamental differences, right? So ITSM is more kind of command and control. There is CCB, the change control board, and it's about the network operations center. So these ideologies kind of shift out, because when we talk about value stream engineering and we talk about SRE being a part of it, it's about empowering the teams. It's about empowering the teams so that they understand the product best compared to anybody else in the organization, right? So there's no this elevated change control board which comes and does some ticks and does some checks. And obviously, if a product team wants to promote something and they want to deploy something, they can always pull the wool on the eyes of the CCB, right? I think that was these things are addressed very well in SRE. So we talk about retrospectives, we talk about failure risks being normal. We also talk about how empowered we are, and we in the sense the product team, and SRE is a part of the product team who has a very deep understanding of the product. They own the life cycle of the entire product. And operational excellence and operational resiliency is something seen as towards the right, but we cannot actually achieve that if we do not do things good in the left, which means right from the way we cut our code, right from the way we commit, right from the way we build our quality gates. So SRE kind of encompasses everything. It's like it's continuum. It's we cannot just separate it out as something towards the right, right? So from an ITSM point of view, ITSM and SRE kind of a comparison point of view. Second difference is how we look at the network operation center. So we do have very good functionality around the TOC or NOC from an ITSM point of view. But from an SRE point of view, it's all about who gets the right kind of alerts. He can be at home, he can be wherever, right? It's about actually us not waking up and making sure that we set the things right after they have gone, with a defect. Or it's about actually making the machines work for us, which means in a typical SRE world, there will be failures, but this failure, when it occurs at a 3 a.m., it's going to throw a bunch of additional logs, but it's not going to wake the SRE up, because the SRE has done already something that would cause an auto heal or a self heal. So the entire proposition here is an SRE will do things proactively, and it's about building this self-healing nature within the system and the ecosystem so that the machines really work for us. So there is this difference that an NOC concept may kind of start becoming a little bit lesser important, and we do have the alerts going directly to the person to whom it matters. We do not have this L1, L2, L3 kind of layers. And the other thing is we do not really have, so it's about crashing the MTTD and detecting these errors, these defects even before they happen. Yeah? These are the fundamental differences that I see, but ITSM is the mother framework that has given a lot of good discipline. It also means that it's not about not having a command framework. It's not about when we are in a crisis. It's about following everything that has been told in ITSM, but applying the new the new kind of empowerment and value stream engineering principles, which is to remove these the flow blocks throughout the life cycle, delivering value for the business. So again, confusion between ITSM and SRE is very unnecessary, and it is again horses for courses. We need to see how we can adopt and be more on.
Helen, I'll tell you the thing that sticks out in your quote from my perspective is the customer experience comment. For me, it's the rallying point around around a lot of these trends, whether it's projects to products, whether it's value stream management thinking, whether it's SRE, a focus that's expanding beyond infrastructure resilience and reliability to actual customer experience quotients. And with all of that focus on customer experiences, these things are starting to come together. The notion of being able to understand the entire process as a system If I'm going to take care of a system, I need to think of it as a system. If I take care of a symptom in one piece of a symptom or one piece of a system, then I'm going to constantly be chasing, the goal. I'm never going to catch up to it unless I understand the overall, makeup of the entire delivery platform and center that around the customer experience. And I think that's been the big change. And the SRE being that face for the customer is really the centerpiece of that whole process. Being the group of the company that takes the temperature of the customer, not just on the reliability, as important as that is, but also on the value being delivered by that system, by that software delivery. Is it meeting the needs of the customer? It may be reliable, it may be stable, and it may deliver squat. And that's not a happy situation. So it's that, to me, that little nuance changes everything. And that's why this topic is so interesting to me, to combine that thinking of systems, thinking of value stream management, and all those things which we've talked about in other webinars and we'll touch on today. That's the key. And I think that's what really stands out to me, Helen, in your quote.
I'm all about customer experience for sure. So one of the audience has asked, actually, can I infer both ITSM and SRE can coexist? So I've said, yes, you certainly can. But while I get the poll started, do you want to respond to that, Shivagami or Bob?
Oh, so
it's in the
sorry.
chat. So it's just, can I infer that both ITSM and SRE can coexist?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, SRE is a culture. ITSM is a framework, right? It's very laid out, and it's a framework which gives you a lot of good processes. It gives you a lot of, how do you really implement, for example, POC? How do you implement? How do you do problem management? How do you do incident management? SRE is a culture. It's very much like DevOps, and it's a cultural thing. So they can definitely coexist, and they should coexist.
Perfect. It's not one or the other. And
Totally.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So poll is live. People are answering it. The poll is asking, what SRE team topology are you working with? And the leading answer at the moment is decentralized, assigned to business products or services. And as I stated that, it equalized with central and central supporting various products and platforms. So we've got, we know a few people in the audience don't have SRE from our earlier question as well. We've got one person saying not just one model, using different team designs. Bob, what else are you seeing in the responses that looks of interest?
It's interesting to me. This, the no centralized teams, zero. I think that's interesting.
That's interesting, because when I'm looking at the poll in the poll section, I'm seeing 19% in that one. But as you say, on the max area on the left, we're seeing 0%. Cody in the background, can you see what I'm explaining there? Looks like a little bit of a bug in the system, because this 0% here should actually read 21%.
Okay. Changes things.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was very surprising when Central showed us 3.
Right.
0.
That would have been a big takeaway.
There's a bug in the system. So for everyone's benefit, that 6% should currently read 19%.
Okay.
Other than that, everything else is correct on there. There we go. Cody's just fixed it. Thanks, Cody. So that's what we're seeing. A bit more of a spread like that. So if we add the decentralized together and kind of went central against decentral, and that actually has gone wrong again, should be 21%, but we've got a lot more people saying decentralized, which I think is probably a preferred model generally in the sort of DevOps world, isn't it? Is to federate and decentralize. Anything else? Yeah.
So a hub and spoke model generally works quite good, which means we do have a centralized platform, a platform team that takes care of making sure that we are having the same kind of understanding of SRE across the different decentralized products. We also can make sure that there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination between the product, and the entire platform itself is built using an in-source model. Yeah? So we do get very good inputs from the different business products which can be used to enrich the platform. And when we talk about platform, again, SRE, when we look at SRE, again, if we look at it holistically and we look at it from a continuum point of view, there is a lot of automation and tools and technologies that are involved within the automation, be it infrastructure as code, be it even the normal CI/CD flows. So when we talk about a tool chain, it is important to have a platform so that we do not have a plethora of things coming out from different areas because they're completely decentralized. And it's important to hold all of these together in a hub. So, I mean, this is probably my view that a combination of decentralized and centralized would really, really work in giving, you will have good jump start in your journey.
So a nice spread of topologies there. So this is your quote, Shivagami, from the Global SRE Pulse Survey and Report 2022. Do you want to read it out for the audience and then maybe unpick what it is that SREs can see and why, and establish really what a true SRE is?
So here I'm just talking about, if we talk about digital transformation itself, right, technology transformation, then SRE and DevOps, these are the biggest enablers. But there are quite a few challenges in the way people have understood it as we see now, and probably it's going to change, right? So as the tagging around SRE and the topologies are confusing, acceptance of SRE as being pivotal for the technology and operational excellence is widely acknowledged. And so that is there. But how do we implement SRE is actually a question most of them have in their mind. And my view here is SREs, if we have to have some certain kind of personas of them defined, then the SREs are quite good coders. They are people who come either from a development background or from an operational background, but they are good coders. They sit alongside developers. They understand that their obsession is actually about digital customer experience, right? So it is about how do I add value to the customer? How do I make things happen which is better for the customer? That's what I'm just talking here about. How do I get the wisdom of development into operations, which means operational people who are taking care of operations are having a mindset of how do I completely build it, run it and operate it in a manner that I create the software itself, right? And they stay right in the center. They are in the confluence of development, deployment, observability, operations. So when we have these decentralized SRE deployments, we will see that an SRE who is in one particular value stream may be doing something completely different from the other SRE who is doing it for another purpose, because their ultimate aim is to make sure that business get the value. So for example, for one of the products, in the product line, in the value stream, it may be that they are actually working more in building the observability because the SLOs that were defined are not backed up with sufficient number of SLIs, right? So they are spending all their effort in actually helping. So it's all about enabling the product team and to help them and to make them understand about how we should bake in observability. Similarly, for another product, probably we are talking about actually building automation during the development phase itself. For the third product line or a value stream, they are actually doing operational excellence there. So trying to automate what can be automated in operations. So you will see the SREs operating differently between the products, and their singular focus is about delivering business value.
Perfect. So there's a very strong link between SRE and VSM. We've got the audience getting a little impatient, wanting to hear more and more about how these two things fit together and how you apply them. So I think you touched on quite a few bits there, Shivagami, and actually you talked about flow earlier on as well. But Bob, I was thinking when Shivagami was talking that you, with your development background, must be quite excited about this path for developers into SRE as well.
I totally am. I think that, and an interesting question came up as well, which is understanding more the incorporation of VSM into SRE. So I think, we have what's needed is a platform, as Shivagami said. The goal of VSM is to achieve customer, satisfaction, is to improve the experience of the customer, to meet the goals of the organization, meet the goals of the customer. Everything's about the customer. And VSM is a platform that ties together from the moment an idea comes up or a backlog gets created from an event of some sort to well past when it goes into production, to understand how that production implementation is going relative to the goals that it was conceived with. Did it achieve the goals? Is it providing the satisfaction of the customer? The notion of projects to products, which is one of the guiding principles that kind of was at the foundation of VSM. The notion of saying, let's remove silos and let's build product teams that are oriented around that customer success of that product or service that we're talking about. And that's the evolution that's occurred. Well, who are the eyes at the end of that? Well, those eyes are the SREs. The SREs are sitting there. They've got a front row seat with respect to that combination that Shivagami mentioned, the combination of the development, the infrastructure, the observability and operations. Are those things all working the way they should work? As they're a part of that team, that product team, as they're a part of that group that owns the soup to nuts around what makes a customer happy, they are automatically in the sphere of value stream management. They're automatically able to see what's going on in production and have those events and have those systems automatically show up in a developer's purview, in a developer's view, in a developer's tech debt. And that the notion of the software development system operating as a system as opposed to a collection of tools gives the SRE a red phone right into the bowels of development, so that anything that needs to happen, it's influenced by what's going on with the customer, by what the customer wants to see, by the reliability and issues might be associated with it. They all come together, and that is the recipe that really makes this all work. So I think value stream management is the platform, SRE, and the production-oriented, ops-oriented scenarios that are so important to guide the development are inherited into the VSM platform, and the system works quite well. That's the magic of value stream management coming together with the remit and skills associated with the SRE. So for me, the SRE is the champion of the customer and one of the most important people in that overall flow of value out to the customer, or as we are calling it, the value stream. So it's a pretty critical component, and it's really exciting to see all these things coming together. The change in the SRE, the evolution of the culture there, the augmentation of a more operations-centric ITSM flow to a more value-oriented customer flow. Similarly, on development with VSM, it seems to me that the goals and objectives of these things are all really lining up, and that's super exciting.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at some of these tenets in a bit more detail. So we've got these SLAs, SLOs, SLIs, and what we're seeing here, and maybe not surprising, is that most people have, or nearly half the people have implemented SLAs, and fewest people have implemented that. So SLAs have been around for a while. What else, Shivagami, do you see when you look at this chart?
I mean, this is not surprising at all. So like I mentioned, right from the ITSM days, we are very, very aware about implementing SLA. But now, how do we really take it back to the different layers of the technology stack, and how do you really measure SLOs, which are obviously tighter than SLAs, but then how do you really tie it back to the SLI? This is something that an SRE is quite capable of doing it and advising the value stream members. So here, in terms of, it's not about actually having an alert hooked onto every single SLI. It's more about how do you do things which, I mean, without a trade-off, right? So there's a trade-off of latency and performance vis-a-vis what exactly makes sense. And so there is this concept called system boundaries. And so we are talking about how do we do things sensibly. So system boundaries help the SREs to define SLIs in a much more manageable manner, and then the SLIs actually completely tie to the SLO and then the SLA. So again, this is how we bring measurements around customer experience and customer happiness, and so it's good to have some, you know, some amount of objectiveness around customer happiness, and that's what an SLA allows us to do. But when we have SLAs, how do you really make sure that the SLA is completely measured, yeah, using metrics, using using distributed tracing. So that is possible using SLAs. So I think the next slide is a little bit better in terms of explaining how exactly can you bring an SLA out to an SLI, right? So as you can see here, so SLIs are so you build it back to back on an SLO, and SLIs really help you with respect to measuring it absolutely using application performance monitoring tools. So in this particular example, for example, for a home page should be rendered, less than 100 milliseconds. So an SLO is when we actually add within what time frames, right? And an SLA is typically about how do you measure it within a particular time frame. So it can fail because it's absolutely foolish to say that I'm going to have all the nines in the world in terms of availability. So we are talking about failures are normal, but what amount of failure is the business going to be willing to pay for us, right? Again, it's about managing the business, it's about managing customer satisfaction, and it's about actually bringing it to life in the SRE world in an absolutely measurable form, right? So here we are talking about how an SLA gets translated into an SLI, and how an SLI, it's not wise to put an SLI at every single layer, but rather build system boundaries and have SLIs around it and build observability on that particular SLI. So we are completely in control of measuring to some extent. I mean, obviously, customer experience is much larger. It's about perception, it's about a lot of other things, and it's not about our own boundaries. So for example, if the ISP is giving certain delays, and if your customer from wherever, if he's from Timbuktu or wherever, he is actually not experiencing the experience that your servers and your boxes are actually delivering it from your place. It doesn't matter, yeah. Customer perception is going to be important, but for us to really have some measurement around the madness, SLIs do help.
Yeah, sorry, I was interrupted by a cat there. Sorry about that. We're actually not too far behind, but let's talk about this piece here. So top reasons to adopt SRE. Bob, do you want to tell us about this slide and what you're seeing here?
Well, I think, for when I look at this, I see, the top number, 68% is really about resiliency and availability. And, this says, we really need to keep things up and running. But right around number 2 is the ability to compete. So, you start to immediately get into, how can we provide not just a reliable system, but a better system so that we become more popular with our customers, but more importantly, our customers stay happy. So I see, if we look at this and we look at this from 5-6 years ago, I think what I see is much more of a customer satisfaction, much more of an improved ability to compete, user retention. These are much more prevalent in the reasons to adopt an SRE today than they ever used to be. And I think they're driving what we're seeing. It's really great.
Perfect. And Shivagami, you introduced Bob and I to this concept of Business 4.0, and we talked about this particularly in the context of customer experience and behavior. So tell us more about how an SRE cares about this stuff here.
Okay. So like I mentioned, right? So when we talk about Business 4.0, two key, very important aspects of that is about how do you keep the customer sticky to our business? Yeah? And this comes from actually giving them a very seamless experience. So the example here is about omni-channel. So if it is a bank, irrespective of where the customer has started the journey for applying for a loan, for example, it could be on a website that they came across this and got interested and started applying for a loan, and then they got interrupted. They called the call center. They wanted additional information. The call center should absolutely know where this person was and not ask all these questions. So the omni-channel experience is about, irrespective of wherever be the touch point, the organization or the business should completely know about where and what the customer intentions were. So now hyper personalization is again another aspect, depending on who is there interacting on your on any of your product or your services. We need to give a very, very hyper personalized experience, right? And this has to be mass personalized, which means that we're talking about every single person who's going to experience our service having a very, very unique and very personalized experience. Now, both these things, the omni-channel experience and a hyper personalized experience, is going to be possible only as we support it as much as possible using technologies. So we are talking about distributed computing. You're talking about having a very granular approach across the technologies, microservices, building them on containers, building auto scaling capabilities, mixing data at rest and mixing data which is in motion to spring up these offers which are very hyper personalized, not after, just as soon as that particular person is on your website or is on your on your application in the mobile. So this entire concept is it's completely about digital customer experience, and it's about adding value and taking this business value across the value stream in a very, very seamless manner to the customer. So customer behaviors are driven by how their experience is, and how do we create this exponential value is about value stream engineering, it's about site reliability engineering. So
yeah, customer experience, as we established, is key, isn't it? So Bob, tell us more about what contributes to customer experience.
Well, as we've been talking about, as I think about customer experience, first thing I think of is, are we delivering the value that's expected, and are we meeting the expectations? And that's coming from me from the standpoint of saying I'm trying to build a software factory that's meeting the needs of a market or a customer segment and growing as a vendor, as somebody. That's where I'm headed. I think from the traditional sense, reliability and availability of the service is critical. If it's not available, then I'm going to be really unhappy. If it's slow, I'm going to be really unhappy. And that's been the case forever, and no one's ever been confused about that. But the value outcome and the ability of the system to adapt. We're living in a world where things are moving very quickly. Organizations are changing, processes are changing, the technologies used to do development are changing, new systems and capabilities are coming up, better insights are being made available both during development and post-production. All of these things provide more information than we've ever had. So there's more choices and more adaptive. Organizations are changing. I have to be able to keep up with that. And if I can't keep up with that, I might be reliable and I might have achieved a good value once upon a time, but it became outdated too quickly. So those are all pretty commanding issues. And then all the while, that quality needs to be there. I mean, I can't have, a poor quality. So that's, I think customer experience, again, if there's one takeaway, that's the big shadow over all of this. And I've got to be able to deliver on those values. And I think this slide, we've used this before, Helen, this is so critical to how we actually deliver that value, isn't it?
Well, it's table stakes, I think, availability and quality in some respects. So, but having poor availability causes more problems because this is the primary cause of this stuff here, and we don't want to be doing unplanned work. So we want to do whatever we can to reduce that unplanned work so that we can do more of that creation of those value outcomes that really make the difference to customer experience and the difference to what our competition is doing. So let's have our third and final poll for today, which is about where your organization is at with VSM implementation adoption. So we've got quite a few answers for you here. So this is where you're at with value stream management adoption. Either you haven't thought about it, or you're evaluating your options, or you're starting to experiment, or you're some way down the line. Perhaps you're starting to feel pretty confident about this, or you've done it all, wow, or you looked at it and it didn't work, or you looked at it and decided it wasn't for you, or other. Please do pop in the chat if you use the other option. So, Bob, where do you think we're going to end up with this one?
Well, I was thinking, based on some of the other numbers, that we would be somewhere between we're starting to experiment and we're somewhere down the line. I think those would be that would have been my prediction as to the top two categories there. Seems like we're somewhere down the line is winning out, although I'm not necessarily getting all the latest numbers yet.
It's good to see that. Yeah, let me just de-minimize that and then maximize it. There we go. That's updated.
Oh, okay. Look at that.
So there we are. So yeah, you're not far off the mark at all. I think it's interesting that obviously I think it is an emerging market, so we'd be very surprised if anybody had done it all. But it's good to know, I guess people haven't had time to look at it and figure out it doesn't work or it wasn't for us yet. We've got, let me just de-minimize that. Let's just refresh that again. So yes, well, that's, sorry, Cody, I'm minimizing and maximizing that it's giving us the numbers for a moment and then sometimes they're going, but there we go. Right, let's just hope it's going to stay this time. So evaluating options, let's close it and then keep it static. That's probably what it's not liking, is me doing it while it's trying to run. So there we go. 31% evaluating options, 31% somewhere down the line. So 62%, nearly 2/3 of the audience in either of those two states. Shivagami, does that surprise you? Is that where you'd expect this data to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's very inspiring to see that people, 17% of people are saying that they're pretty confident about it. It's really good. That means a lot of value has been seen in the implementation of VSM, which is great. So
great. So let's have a think about value stream management in a bit more detail. So this is from the Value Stream Management Consortium. Bob, do you want to talk a bit more about these two dimensions? I think we've touched on both of them quite a lot, but let's just kind of have clarity around the two things.
Yeah, I think, if we look at flow, we think of flow a lot in value stream management, and we think of flow is really the movement of the artifacts, the work items from, all the way through the value stream. And we worry a lot about, its health. We worry about whether we're being efficient about it. We worry about how quickly we're moving, products or releases through that. And that's the health. And it doesn't think so much about what the payload is that's being delivered. It thinks more about how effective the system is at delivering that payload through from the time an idea is conceived to the time the customer is achieving the value that was intended. Value realization is the redhead stepchild. Often not heard about as much, but it's like, look, if I'm gonna have solid flow, I better be really cognizant of what's going on with the customer. So, for example, we are starting to get a lot of questions about, hey, can I start to measure customer experience metrics like net promoter scores or customer retention or whatever else might be the driving force of that service or application being delivered. Can I measure that against what's going on in the value stream? Can I measure that against the goals that were set up and whether or not they actually were achieved? That customer experience is, as we've said, pretty critical. So we worry a lot about that from a vendor point of view, from a value stream management point of view. We worry a lot about making sure that we have real strong insight into what's actually being delivered, how well it's achieving the goal, and whether or not the customer experience is tracking the right direction. All the while, the flow is making sure that that journey is effective and that we get better at it and we improve the delivery. We talk about velocity of it. Really what we want to do is make sure we're delivering the value when the customer needs it. It isn't so much delivering as fast as we can, it's delivering it when the customer needs it. And that's critical. So these two go hand in hand. Value realization is a more recent phenomena over the course of the last several years, in my opinion. Flow is something that that we've worried about a lot, and value stream management kind of unlocked a little bit of that with some of the ways that it looks at the system of delivering software. But I think both of these are critical. We've talked about it before, and I think without either of them, you're going to fall short of achieving the goals of customer satisfaction.
So efficiency on the left, efficacy on the right. Is it 50-50, Shivagami, for an SRE?
So I think for an SRE, so there are few things how it actually maps with the VSM. Again, it depends on the maturity of the organization. So technical debt and product features. So often what happens is it's more that the product features that are seen as very very applicable when we decide about how the value has to flow through the value stream. But we do see that off late there's a lot of understanding that tech debt is going to be significantly impacting the flow because it's been neglected all along. And hence, efficiency of flow and the velocity are both probably equally important. And velocity, when we talk about velocity, it's about product features and also the technology features. So the SRE, I mean, in an ideal world, makes sure that using principles like error budget, makes sure that the technology features are not neglected. And the technology features and the product features are both considered in terms of the flow of velocity and efficiency.
I love that way of splitting the backlog, technology features and product features, because so often we talk about features and user stories and then we talk about improvement or tech debt or toil. And I think people kind of deprioritize that. They have less admiration, should I say, for those items, and they get dropped off the list. But I think calling them technology features is a really powerful way of equalizing the feeling of the importance of both of those types.
Yeah.
So this is how we view a value stream, and it's a value stream, and when we do value stream maps, they're so often linear and from left to right. But what we've learned so much in DevOps is that we're in continuous loops so much. So we prefer to represent a value stream as a loop as well. And all value streams have, and here we're talking about digital value stream, but digital value streams all have 5 common components, regardless of what they're doing, really. So we have where the ideas start, which is our portfolio and backlog. And we have the work of the coding, the validation of that code, the delivery of that code, and then the receipt of insights into value realization that feeds back into what we decide to do next. So Bob and I have talked about this before, Shivagami, but let's get your view on this. Where does an SRE get involved in these parts of a value stream, in your view?
So all across. So that's what we need to take home probably. So it's not about the SRE just looking into the insights, observability, or the operational aspect or the delivery aspect. So let me just give you an example. So an SRE, if he is going to be a part of the product implementation lifecycle, which is a PI cycle, which people call it as the heartbeat, which looks into the epics and then the features and then you have the stories coming out, right? So that particular planning cycle is where we decide what kind of technology, technical features we're going to take into that particular PI cycle, yeah. So PI cycle could be for 2 months or 3 months, and then you have the sprint planning cycle. But right upfront there, alongside the product manager, along with the business, the person who is going to actually talk about the benefits of having an architectural runway and having technology features alongside product features is going to be very powerfully delivered by an SRE, because people are not going to understand otherwise. If you build technical debt, and then if your system is going to become unreliable and if technology obsolescence is going to come in, the best person and to engage is going to be during the backlog grooming and the portfolio planning phase. And obviously, continuous integration through the CI/CD flows, making sure that it's continuously tested, making sure that the deployment itself is going to be based on whatever the needs of the business is. It could be canary based, it could be blue green, it could be A/B testing. These features are also most of the times an SRE is a very key member in enabling the product team adopt these technologies or having these capabilities built in. Yeah. So very much a part of this continuous integration, continuous testing, continuous deployment and delivery. And obviously this is where on the right side is where probably SREs are very popularly known. For example, they perform infrastructure as code, or they understand operations, or they do the deployment, they do production promotes. But it's not that, it's completely from the left to the right, hence it's very well represented here. So they play key roles across the value stream.
So absolutely everywhere, which is coincidentally the answer that Bob and I have given on previous webinars as well. So excellent, we're all aligned with that. Bob, there's a question that's come in from the audience. There's been a few that I've been answering in the chat itself, but I thought this one was one that's definitely worth doing live, because you're about to kind of answer it anyway, but let's tackle it head on. How do you differentiate the VSM platform from DevOps toolchains and agile planning solutions implementation? So I think you'll probably explain that, but I'll pass over to you to address this in whatever way you deem most appropriate.
I missed that question, but that's a good one. Could you repeat it for me one more time, Helen?
Yeah, you can find it in the Q&A under new, and it says, how do you differentiate a value stream management platform from DevOps toolchains and agile planning solutions implementation?
Well, the answer the first thought is one of the very first definitions of value stream management that I saw was value stream management is equal to agile plus DevOps plus measured outcomes. So the value stream management platform is a superset of the agile development scenario, the left, if you will, and the DevOps tool chains, the CI/CD, and all the other things that are going on, whether they're waterfall or the most advanced development possible. The development activity, the planning activity, value stream management sits over the top of that and then brings in measured outcomes, which in the case of VSM, we talk about KPIs. In the case of SREs, we're talking about SLAs, which is very similar to KPI for that service. And I think that that's where we're headed. So that's what value stream management is with respect to those things. It attempts to solve some key components or some key challenges of really around visibility across a pipeline, visibility between pipelines, visibility that takes into account multiple technology types as well as release types, and then bring that into the production environment and make sure that value and reliability are there, as we've discussed. The SRE being a part of that whole overall VSM platform as well. I think it's really the superset of those two key components with that measured outcome component added onto it.
Nice. And how does this relate to the challenges that value stream management solves?
Well, value stream management solves that visibility so that you can actually see the value, the efficacy of what you're delivering and the efficiency of what you're delivering by having that visibility. And that feeds the SRE's need to make sure that the customer is satisfied. So everything comes together in a nice bow at that point. It really does.
Great. So I think this is your last slide, Bob.
Yeah, and this is how we do it. And this is an architecture or a marketecture, I like to call it, of what's going on inside of a value stream management platform, from understanding what's going on in the tool chain, bringing all that information into a common data model so I can normalize it and then have it as a converged tool chain, which gives me that system, which is that 5-component value cycle that you were talking about earlier. And I'm able to orchestrate and manage that pipeline, and I'm able to surface the KPIs and decision-making metrics that are needed that cover both the entire journey, from the idea of the service or product to the satisfaction that it's delivering to the customer and everything in between. So by having this platform sit across the entire tool chain, I can do all the things. I can start to do all those things that we've been talking about for the last hour.
From concept to cash, from aha to ka-ching. I remember saying ka-ching in a training course one day, and I had to explain to someone in the room what ka-ching was, because we don't really have tills anymore.
No, we don't.
So our key takeaways today, it really is time that SREs embrace VSM. SREs are IT Ops. IT Ops is part of VSM. They're either part of core or supporting value streams. And they can prioritize their work according to the flow, and destroying toil helps because technical debt is stifling that flow. And customer experience really is measured and seen all the way through our SLAs, SLIs, and SLOs. So I think we won't take any more questions, but we'll pass to Cody to do what Cody needs to do, and then we'll sign off.
Well, Helen, thank you so much. And to Shivagami and Bob, thank you both so much for joining us as well. We really appreciate all of you taking the time to join us and sharing your expertise with our audience. So again, thank you.
Pleasure.
So to our audience, just a quick reminder that today's session was recorded. So following this program, you will receive an email with a link to access the recording on demand, or you can find the recording living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and just be sure to look in the on-demand section. So we do still have those 4 $25 Amazon gift cards to give out. Our first winner is Giovanna D. Our second winner is Gabriel L. Our third winner is Dean H. Our fourth and final winner is Renata Z. So to our 4 winners, congratulations. Please keep an eye on your email inbox to claim that gift card. But if you do not happen to see an email, just check your spam folder. So we would like to thank Plutora for sponsoring today's program. And to our audience, we appreciate you spending time with us as well. We do ask for just one extra moment of your time for a brief survey that should pop up on your screen as soon as we close out. But otherwise, we do hope to see everyone at an upcoming Techstrong Learning program. Everyone, have a great rest of your day. And Helen, Shivagami, Bob, thank you once more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shivagami. Thank you, Helen.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you all.